Hello. I think this is working. So, yeah, bit of a different stream tonight. Um, some interesting stories, some interesting things that have happened, and I decided rather than trying to figure out how to squeeze time in for gaming and time to take care of stuff that's happening here in my actual life, I would kind of merge the two. Um, Maybe not always the best idea, but I'm into technical stuff. It's basically my entire life. So I figured it wouldn't be a bad thing to sort of stream some of this. So start off with a little bit of a story time. This computer back here, which I can angle it down. Yay! This computer is it's not the first computer that I built, but it's like the first serious computer that I built. Um, Basically, swing this over. I think it was 2008, 2008 or 2010. I'm pretty sure it was 2008. Um, I wanted to get into PC gaming. Computers I had at the house, I was still living with my parents at the time. Um, they weren't really up and up for the kind of games that I wanted to play. I wanted to get into more competitive stuff, more graphically intensive stuff, and just didn't really have a machine capable of doing that. So did a lot of research, started getting into like a lot of hardware stuff, and ended up picking out a whole slew of things. A lot of pretty high end at the time equipment, which I mean, going back 12 years, that stuff has obviously changed pretty significantly. But a lot of this stuff is still highly functional. In fact, I don't even know what this framing is. So, what I really should have done, my initial plan with this whole stream was to come up with a whole layout for like my office. Uh, if the camera angle catches any of the disaster that is around us, I apologize. I am in the midst of trying to reconfigure everything. My desk, which is sitting right here in front of me, I'll be tearing that up soon. I think end of May, and putting new legs on it. It's going to be one of the standing desks. I got uplift legs. I'll be putting on there. So, just in preparation for a lot of that, I am sort of in a state of chaos. So forgive any of the mess that is around here. I wasn't planning on doing this stream now, which brings me to the first story and reason why it's happening now. Windows, after 12 years of this thing running pretty well, with minor amounts of maintenance, Windows pushed an update beginning of the week at some point. And when that update came down, it effectively broke my computer. Now, broke my computer. I hate hearing that because it's like, computer isn't broken. It's right here. It powers on. It can boot, kinda. But what was going on is the update came down. The update was put in place. When the computer does the restart to kind of like finish and apply all of the updates that it pulled in, it failed. It was giving me an error telling me critical process died. So did a little bit of research on that. It's a little more of a generic error code. You can get into logs and stuff, but at the end of the day, it was like, okay, this thing was running perfectly fine the day before. Updates come down, it stops working. It's an update issue. So what I'll do is I'll just remove that update. So I booted into the repair mode, and which I guess for the sake of anyone listening that doesn't necessarily know how to do that, you can just power cycle your computer. If it's Windows 10, I think even 7 maybe had this feature, but if you power cycle it right after the OS starts to load, so if you have like a machine from like Dell or HP, as soon as that like initial splash screen were to show like their logo, that basically says like, oh, okay, we're loading the OS now. You just hard shut down the computer and turn it right back on. Supposedly on the third reboot like that, it will launch into the it'll like when it goes to load the OS, it'll actually load the automatic repair tool, try to figure it out, and if it can fix the stuff for you right off the bat, then it will. If it can't, then it will give you the option to get into like the troubleshooter. You can get into all sorts of different settings there. You can even reset your PC. So I booted into that and get it into the troubleshooter. Ran a couple things in the command prompt just to see what I could see. Everything seemed to be okay, and they have a tool in there that allows you to uninstall updates, so it makes it a lot easier just to take the time. You just click on that and say like, yeah, I want you to remove the last quality or the last feature update. Feature updates are supposed to be optional, and the fact that this had done it automatically without my consent whatsoever, I came to the conclusion it was probably a quality update. So I uninstalled the last quality update and booted the computer, and it worked. Once I was in, because of all the trouble that I had had getting into that, I did run a couple of scans and everything was okay. Found a couple issues, but resolved them. Then I got to a point where I was like, you know what, for the sake of just checking everything I possibly can, I'm going to run a check disk with fix option just to make sure everything there's good. I ran that, but the problem was I forgot to turn the updates off. So, my mistake. Computer re-downloads and redoes the whole update process, puts me back into the loading problem from the very start. Except this time, when I get into the repair menu, it doesn't let me actually uninstall the update. So after struggling with that for a while, I decided that I didn't want to put any more time into it. Microsoft broke it, in my opinion, and I wasn't really interested in putting my time into fixing what seemed to be, in my opinion, their mistake. A little bit of a bad way of looking at it, I guess, but whatever. So I called their technical support and was like, hey, can you guys help me with this? And as usual with technical support, no, they can't. They can't really help you. I spent a long time on the phone with two different technicians. Prior to the technicians, you're on the phone with a call handler, like somebody who just like answers the calls and like takes all the information, which proved to be completely worthless because even though I gave them all of the information that I had, they put it in a ticket. They send me to the technician. I give them the ticket number. They load it, and then they ask me to re-explain everything again anyway. So didn't really serve much of a point me talking to the first guy, but it occupied some of my time, so that's, I guess worth mentioning. Moved on from that. Both techs tried to have me do a couple of different things. The first one recommended I look at like system restore points, and I was like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I could just restore the machine to a previous point. There should be a couple in there. So I went in, I checked, and sure enough, there was. It might seem kind of silly that like I have to call tech support for them to tell me, hey, try a restore point. But in my defense, I don't really see that as fixing a problem, right? I mean, the update has an issue. If I write code that has a bug in it, I have to fix that bug. So it's not something that I was just thinking, let me just put a Band-Aid on this, reset the machine, reset whatever, and get on with my life. Should have, but I didn't think that way. So, I go in, I check the restore points. I find that there is, in fact, a restore point. So I try to restore it. Well, that froze. It got the whole way to the end and said it had finished, but then it just froze there. And the guy said, it can take some time. So let it sit there like that for a while. I'm like, all right, that's fine. I don't care. I'm working on my main machine anyway. This is my general home computer, so it's okay. I'll let it go. So I get off the phone with him and let this thing just sit and go with the finished screen up. For an hour and a half. An hour and a half later, I say, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and shut this thing off. I mean, how long am I supposed to look at a completed progress bar with the message finished before I say, something's up? So, and don't worry, I did actually Google that as well, just to make sure that there wasn't a common consensus that if you're restoring an image that on the Windows 10 machine, oh boy, it's going to take 5 hours once it hits the finished screen. No, I mean, I saw for the most part, people were even on big systems, it should take no more than 35 minutes. So I gave it plenty benefit of the doubt before I went ahead and just restarted the whole thing. I did try the restore point again, just because, I like to look like a little bit crazy. So why not try it again? Still the same result. I call tech back because I'm like, you know what? No, this is what they told me to do, and it's not working. What if I was just some random individual that doesn't feel comfortable working with any of this software, any of this hardware? What if, what do people do if they need help? They call these techs. So I decided I'm going to call back. I'm going to see what they have to say now that I've done everything that they wanted me to do and it hasn't panned out. And I talked to a different guy. Took significantly longer time to kind of get to the same position that I had been in before I even called the first tech support person. And it finally results in him saying well, if you can just reset the PC, that's going to be the easiest thing for you. At this point, fine. At this point, I will do it because I don't really care. If I'm going to lose my applications, I'm okay with that. I didn't want to lose my data, of course, so that was something that, there's an option for that when you reset your PC to keep your personal files. So I say, all right, fine, whatever, I'll just fire that off and it'll be done. So I say, this shouldn't take too long, right? And he's like, shouldn't, as long as everything goes smooth, it should be pretty quick depending on your internet speed, because we had it pull down the latest image and all that. Well, okay, but it stopped. It downloaded the whole thing perfectly fine, pretty quick. Then it went through the process of actually resetting or installing the new, OS, and it got to 17%. I have some pictures as well, screenshots, if you will, that kind of indicate this stuff, just so that if I needed to reference it for whatever purpose, so I've got some proof if I need to put it up on some socials or something, but it just froze at 17%. I left it like that for, I think, around 5 hours. The wife and I went somewhere, and I was like, hey, you know what? I'm just gonna let it sit. Gonna let it do what it's trying to do. I'm sure that a whole system restore couldn't possibly, fail like this. So, lo and behold, I get home. It's still 17%, and I'm like, all right, well, the heck with this. Shut her down. Now, that's the story of why I'm here today on somewhat of a rush. Because there was a plan. There was a plan from the very beginning with this machine kind of becoming a new machine. This is a terrific case. I absolutely love this computer case. It is heavier than a tank. It's, I don't know, probably, I don't know. I'm going to say 30 to 50 pounds. It's all metal construction. If you know your cases, it is an older case. Again, it's 12 years back. So, it is an older case, but this is the Antec 1200. Not the 900, but the 1200. And what I like about the 1200 is all of the drive bays. This thing can hold a whopping 12 hard drives. if you load it up with just hard drives. I did pull hard drives out of it today. We had some issues. I needed to get into some of my data, which I'll get to that at some point to talk about in a moment. But so I've already kind of got a little bit of a head start. The original plan was to have a stream of me tearing this thing down from scratch, explaining my original setup a little bit and why I went with that kind of setup, and then taking those pieces and putting them into another case, which is down below here. It's a little bit smaller of a case. It's more to the scale of like a normal like home PC. This is more of it's a full ATX. I mean, it's like a server case overall. And then what this is going to actually become is a general server of mine, like a home server. I'm going to be putting like Unraid on it and running like Plex and like my own version of own cloud, which is basically like your own cloud storage, NAS kind of software. Seems pretty cool stuff. But all of that can be put on here. I've got 32 terabytes of hard drives in the corner to put in this, in the form of 8 4 terabyte drives. Now with Unraid, you can assign 1 or 2 of those drives to be parity drives. And Unraid is basically, is from what I understand, it's an operating system that runs like software level RAID over an array of disks. So I don't know a ton about it. I'll be getting more familiar with it throughout this whole process, but that's not all happening tonight. By the end of tonight, I'll be happy if we have this thing torn apart and the new pieces in place in the new case. So if I can get there, then I'll be happy. And the reason that I was kind of going this route as well is just because this thing was built for a reason that is no longer fully valid. The graphics card is showing its age finally. It's not really up to snuff for like VR or even like any cutting edge or new video games that are out there. It served its purpose plenty, and the hardware is still running perfectly fine, minus, I mean, let's be honest, the fact that my system reset and everything failed. Most likely there's an issue with the hard drive that the system was installed on, or an issue with hard drive somewhere in there that was preventing that from actually installing correctly. So obviously there are issues with the hardware. It is unfortunate though that I'm rushing into this because, again, the whole plan, like the lighting's terrible. I look very disheveled. It's been a long, long day and a very long week. But I can't really put this off, and I didn't want to not stream like what I'm doing with the machines. So the setup could be a lot better for sure. Yeah. And I also had like, I don't know, just a couple other plans involved, but they're all kind of just out the window because I got to get this going. So I guess the nice thing will be that since I'm repurposing all of this stuff, not a lot of this is going to have to be torn completely apart. My hope is that I'll leave the CPU intact. I'll just leave all of this as is. We're not going to pop the heat sink off and everything else. There's no reason to disrupt all of that. Though the thermal paste probably could be refreshed because, I mean, it's old. But I don't ever really seem to have like overheating issues or anything like that with this computer. It's got a very large output fan on the top, 2 normal-sized output fans on the back, and then 3 intake fans across the front. And it's a even with all the stuff in there, it's a fairly open case, so like airflow is pretty good. Plus, I mean, we got like fan on the graphics card, and obviously the fan on the heatsink for the CPU. All in all, the air is moving pretty well. The side panel has also got a nice glass, window with a fan opening on. I never bothered to put a fan on that because it didn't really seem like it was necessary for my particular build, but I could throw one in there if I wanted and get some more air getting forced out of there. But even just having like the opening where the fan could go gives more more airflow in there, so that's sort of nice. I guess since this is like the first time this build's ever actually been seen anywhere, like my actual computer build, I will call out a couple things I didn't like about it. The case itself has ports in the back. Yeah, you can kind of see those right here, where you can run like water cooling pipes through. I had to do this where I actually have a USB plug that is hooked up to one of my front panel devices. It needed to be plugged into a USB, but I had no USB headers available on the motherboard anymore, and I didn't want to get like an expansion card. Plus, this device actually had like a normal USB-A plug on it. So I thought, well, I'm not doing water cooling, so I can just bring this through one of those holes and plug it in the back. I hated having to do that because I wanted this thing to be such a nice build, and it felt so clunky to do that. But, I mean, you do what you got to do. At the end of the day, it did the job, and it worked perfectly fine. So, really no reason to be too upset with it. The other thing that I just going on, so that isn't really much of a critique on the case, but a critique on my build in particular. As far as components go, motherboard never gave me any trouble. I was really happy with the motherboard. I did have some issues with RAM. I tried to upgrade it twice, I think, and in both cases, the upgrade didn't really take. So I guess I could say that the motherboard's a little bit finicky in that way. But regardless, the only thing... Yeah, that's just a capture card. Yeah, so I put a capture card in this, which I didn't really use much. The only thing that's like really noteworthy to call out is this Corsair power supply, 1,000 watt. It's a 1,000 watt fully modular, which I love modular power supplies. Came with a nice like nylon case with all of the possible cables that you would need to pull out of that. And at 1,000 watts, I had enough to power anything. It was important to have a pretty beefy one with this graphics card. It was something that was like not really recommended, but like almost insisted. Like if you're getting this graphics card or higher, you want a higher, a beefier power supply. And this one would have worked with, this is ATI, so I don't think they use Crossfire. That's NVIDIA, but SLI, I think it is, where you could connect the two together and basically have two graphics cards that give you like all that additional power. So there was part of me that was thinking about expanding that at one point. So I thought, well, yeah, you know what? I'll make sure I get enough of a beefy power supply that if I put a second one in, that'll cover me. But yeah, that's all the notes I'd say on my actual build. Things I'd like to just point out, I guess. And then as far as the actual like case itself goes, like I said, things that I really love. I think as far as like features go, the back panel is really well laid out. can kind of, you can kind of see. I mean, obviously the I/O, that board here on the back of the I/O panel, I guess, or shield even. This is motherboard stuff, so it's not like that matters a whole lot for the case. But I think that the way this is laid out, two fans, the I/O fan controls are back here, expansion card slots, the ability to put in water cooling. I don't know. I like the layout of the back of this a ton. I thought it was a really, really nicely organized case. And then, like as I had mentioned before, all of the fans for cooling, I think was also a great addition. They do have a nice space in the back. On the back side or the back panel for cable routing. It's a little bit of a mess right now. I had it bundled a little bit better, but I had to get into here today to take a couple things out of here. But regardless, it was nice having like a space back behind the motherboard mount point to actually run all of my cables. And also, I guess I should also mention about for myself, I'm not as interested in hardware as I once was. That's why I'm not mentioning graphics card by name. Back then, I knew exactly what it was and like all the power that it had. And nowadays, I'm too busy with other things that I'm more interested in, which is somewhat unfortunate. Like I look back and I'm like, hey, it was kind of fun messing around with like computer hardware. And I'd like to get into hardware more, but not quite like this. And that's a whole other story. Mostly like talking about like circuitry and stuff like that. But that said, I apologize for anyone watching this in the future, anyone listening in. I definitely am not going to be using like the most accurate terminology again as well. Maybe I would have researched it a little bit more and prepped this a little bit more before actually doing the stream, but I had to do this. I got to get this thing going. So it's the other thing to call out. I guess we'll look at the front real quick. So the Antec 1200 and 900, they both kind of had the same look. The 900 has one less set of three for hard drives. These are actually my only real complaint with the case. These hard drive cages... Yeah. So the hard drive slides in. You get three of them in each one of these cages. But these cages are my problem with the whole build, because they aren't easy to remove. To make sure they mount in there nice and securely, you have to put 4 of these little like thumb screws. I hold it up to the mic. I'm sure everyone has seen like these kind of like mounting screws before, but you have to put 4 of those in each side of the case if you don't want it to like wobble at all. Which means you have to open the back side panel as well. And I know a lot of people that had the case just said that, I'll just put them on the one side and be done with it. But in terms of design, of the case, it is intended that you put it on both sides. So they feel that that's an okay thing to have to do. They have to take, both side panels off to be able to remove one of these cages. And you might think right off the bat, well, why does that matter? And you're right. I mean, in general, you shouldn't have to ever really remove the cages. You're going to put the hard drives in there. If you need to serve as a hard drive, swap it out. Sure, but how often is that happening? It's not a big deal to remove both side panels every once in a while to do that. In addition to that, you also have your Molex connector, which is going in off of this thing. So if you take those thumb screws out and you pull the cage out, this thing can only go as far as obviously it's going to let you. It's not the longest cable. So it gets plugged in. I have mine plugged in back behind, so I didn't have all these wires all over the place. That's what powers the fan. So, I mean, it's important to have that have that plugged in. So now you have that in there as well. So I've opened both sides. I've taken all these screws out, and I still have this thing connected in there, so I can't slide this thing the whole way out. I mean, you can, but you can't sit it down anywhere. There's not enough cable, not enough wire here for you to be able to lay it on a shelf or on your desktop. So, I mean, you're kind of working with it with your hand and everything in there. And of course, you got hard drives in there, right? And each hard drive has 2 screws on each side to remove. So now you have to take those thumb screws out initially, slide this thing out. We'll leave this plugged in because, we don't really feel like pulling all of our Molex connectors apart just to get this whole cage out. And then we have to unscrew each of the side screws to be able to get the drive out of it. Which also, again, if you don't take all of the SATA connectors and everything off of the back of your drive, you still really can't pull the whole cage out because all the drives are hooked up. And, again, this wouldn't be a big deal if you didn't need to get into this at all. And here's the reason that this is the thing I really don't like about it, is that right here is a dust filter that goes, in front of the fan so that as these intake fans are pulling in your dusty air from the house, it's not pulling the dust all the way through into the computer. Well, to clean that, because these things slide in all the way so that the front edge is straight across the front of the computer. And this tab is back behind it. So to be able to actually clean your dust filter properly is you have to actually go through that process of taking the thumb screws out and sliding it out. Now, you can slide it out enough to get your finger under that lip and pull that out there, but it's still less convenient than it should be. That's my opinion of it. And I think that they also corrected that. If I remember correctly, there's a version after this of the Antec cases that had doors that would swing out. And that's how you would get to the filter. I imagine somebody shortly after making this was like, well, that's a bit of a pain to get into. I actually rarely would take them out to clean them properly. I would just use a canned air and kind of blow it in at the side, and it would push the dust kind of out around. I'm sure I also blasted dust back into the computer, but I couldn't be bothered to pull this thing apart every single time I wanted to clean it. Maybe that's something people do common. I don't know. I could see pulling the side panel off, getting some of the dust out of the case, but to have to take both sides off and unscrew all the screws and slide the things out, it's too much work. Too much work. All right. Some other things that were kind of cool. I mean, I put these like different panels in and everything. This was a an IR sensor, so I could actually control it with a remote. Um, my original thought was that I'd be using this thing to like watch a lot of movies and everything else, but the reality was I never really did. So this was a bit of a bust. It was sort of pointless. It was neat to put in, and it was neat to actually like. Because when I first put it in, of course, I used it a bunch. Sort of like my digital storm case that I have here behind me, like my main computer. Um, it has a remote to change the colors of all the lights and everything, but I don't really use it. I have it set to red, and I just let it go at that. So, uh, so yeah, I think that's about it, really. I mean, I guess I could also point out like one thing that I'm really upset about is that my CD-ROM drive stopped working. I mean, it worked. It opens and closes, but my computer wasn't reading it anymore. That's something I'm going to be curious to see if it was an issue with the motherboard or if it was an issue with the software. So whenever I get this new thing set up, I'm going to use all the old hardware and just see if it's better. I have a solid state drive that I will be installing the operating system on instead of the existing, I believe, bad, faulty hard drive. So lots to do. So I think that said, I think my plan here is I'm going to go silent for a moment, readjust the camera so that it's in a better angle to see the computer itself and some of the innards, and then start swapping stuff out from one case to the other. So let's do that. And also, as far as another setup issue goes, I am sorry, I meant to have like music going, but after my last run with the Twitch soundtrack application, I don't really rely on that because it doesn't let you post the content to a VOD, and it just feels questionable, I guess. And any music playing, basically, you know how that works. You know, if I say, "Hey, listen to this really cool song by Green Day," uh, obviously the entire world thinks that I'm telling them that I am Green Day and I own this music. So, long story short, there's no music, and I apologize because I think that it's incredibly boring just watching somebody sit here or stand here and talk. But that's what it's going to end up being. So sorry. Anyway, let me put this on hold. I'll get things resituated, and I'll be back in just a few moments. See if that. Hmm. Bear with me. This is an impressive little mic boom arm. Forgive my arm. Okay. So, the first thing we're going to be doing is setting up, or rather pulling out the like the graphics card. Probably detach that just so we don't end up like shearing off the pins whenever I pull the motherboard out of there. Getting all these cables kind of out of our way as well. We will have to disconnect the CD-ROM drive as well, so that's going to be coming. Hopefully I don't bump this camera too much. I don't really want to make a whole bunch of like shaky video, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. You know, if I had a few less projects going on at the same time, this would be a little bit better, but life gives you lemons, you know? Now, it's been a while since I've taken any of this stuff apart or been into this particular machine, so I do want to be a little bit cautious about like what I'm pulling when, but obviously some safe stuff is just to kind of pull the CD-ROM drive off cable-wise. We can get that out of our way. And then what's nice is that because this is modular, angle this down a little more, give us a better view of the inside. Yeah, it fits all pretty well in frame, actually. We can start pulling these out of here because they, as I said, are all modular. Which, you know, is that damaged? No. Now I'm wondering because that's a device that wasn't working, but this would just be its power, and it definitely had power, so... Oh, well, it's fine. All right, let me see what else we've got here. Make sure all of these are disconnected, and we'll pull the PSU out of there. We gotta get this off the board. Biggest thing you want to be kind of cautious of when you're working around inside is just looking for capacitors, which are usually like cylinders kind of stick up off of the board. Usually. They also have a couple different like formats of them. Not sure if the other ones are actually all that dangerous, but even a small capacitor can hold enough charge. It's actually usually whenever you hear about somebody like dying because they were in a computer, something happened, they got themselves hurt one way or the other. It's usually because of that. It's usually because of they touched the top of a capacitor, and the capacitor then discharges and into you, and then you get shocked. And it's usually just enough to do a job on you. Be careful because a lot of these connections are a little brittle, and I am trying my hardest to reuse all of this stuff. So, though this particular piece, this is a little bit unstandard here. It's a weird solution is for the IR device. Actually, put that in like in between your 24 pin connector and the motherboard, and then it gave like power and the feed into the motherboard for the IR device. But it was certainly an interesting cable. Not something that you see on every computer. Of course, not every computer has the IR device on it. Yeah, this cable is just going off to the IR. A lot of these cables I could probably get completely cleared up because they're not hooked up to like anything anymore. But I'm just gonna stuff them in here, get them out of my way for the time. And then we will take these plugs off the back of the graphics card. It's dedicated power to the graphics card. And get these SATA plugs off of here. Be nice if we could move right from the power supply into taking the motherboard out. Well, graphics card and then motherboard. This graphics card, honestly, I mean, for its age, it's still doing a pretty nice job. So I don't really want to. I don't want to risk damaging it. Plus, getting a new graphics card is going to be a lot more of a hit financially than actually, I think, anything else in the computer. Motherboard and CPU are expensive if you have to get those. Like motherboard, CPU, and RAM. If you had to buy all three of those. But honestly, even having to buy all three of those, a good graphics card could still easily beat the price of all of that. Could. Obviously, if you're buying like the best motherboard on the market and you're putting on like 2 or more of the best CPUs, like, yeah, I mean, obviously you can go ridiculous, make anything expensive. It's a weird SATA plug. What's that for? Oh, I think that was the case, the front panel of the case. Man, I could have unplugged that and used that SATA plug, because I never used my eSATA port. Well, maybe somebody out there does. Maybe they use it a whole bunch, but it's never something that I was really in need of. Thought it was cool. Like when I first saw it, I was like, oh, yeah, that's nice. It's a nice port. Maybe I'll have a reason for using it at some point. I never did. Not once. Okay. So that takes care of all of the SATA plugs on the motherboard. Okay. Is this guy completely free? No, because of the power going underneath it here. Well, with my light where it is, I don't really want to risk pulling this thing out of there, flipping my light off of the computer, so we will let that alone. We'll go ahead and move to taking the graphics card out. Grab this. Yes, I got a little toolkit from wow, from Newegg. Kind of a lame kit in a way, because like there's not a lot of tools in it. There's not a lot of stuff in it. But what is in it is like the main tool sizes and everything that you need for servicing a computer. So it is specifically for like computer hardware stuff, but it is rare that I'm in a machine that I need a tool that isn't in that kit. So I guess it does its job, right? Yeah, and definitely do as I say, not as I do kind of situation. You should be tethered in some way to keep like the risk of like static electricity down so that you don't fry any of your components. I don't dust on that thing. Yeah. These particular slots have little hooks on them. Not sure if you can actually make that out or not, but these little hooks have to be bent up to allow the card to slide out. Sort of nice to kind of have it be held in there. Oh, so there we go. It's an ATI Radeon, HD 5850 Black Edition. I know when I got this thing, it was literally just one step down from the best card in that like line for the ATI stuff. I didn't want to, man, that's caked with dust. I did not want to get the most expensive one. It always felt kind of silly to get by the top line because it was so much more money and it wasn't a whole lot better. I mean, they go, they're outdated so quickly. So, all right, I'm going to blow the dust out of this thing. Yeah, dusty. One thing I can definitely say is that the card is very heavy, which was another pretty large concern about the build in general, because you have some that are so heavy they can actually do damage to like the slot and everything. So you got to make sure you really have it mounted in there really well. But it's not like it's not a big deal. It's not the biggest deal or biggest problem. Yeah, this capture card was cool. It's a neat idea. They've got a lot better solutions out there now for like capturing video from other things, but back when I built this 12 years ago, I actually wanted to be streaming. I think I've mentioned that whenever I have been streaming as of late, how I used to procrastinate the idea of streaming or making YouTube videos because I wanted to have things ready. Life lesson, you know, things are never really ready. You just got to do stuff you want to do. It's a lesson I learned. So, unfortunately, myself back then did not know that lesson as much as I needed to. Yeah, so this was just neat. It actually has it came with a dongle that you hooked into here, and like it was literally just like this bundle of cables that like hung out of this port that you could plug like composite video component. I think it had an S video hookup. Like basically every form of video feed that you could have at that time, they accepted through that dongle. It was a pretty impressive little card, and it wasn't like a crazy amount of money. So like I wanted to be able to like hook my Xbox up. Back in those days, I was playing a ton of Xbox Live, lots and lots and lots of Halo. Now, probably won't get a whole lot of use, if I'm being honest. Not that it really ever got a lot of use anyway. Not too sure what this is. Ear. I mean, I know it's got to come out. So let's go ahead. HD audio. That looks like a USB header. Curious about where that leads. Because I only really use like the onboard audio, so I'm not too sure what that could be, but oh well. All right, so I think that does it for all the main components. Then the last thing we got to do is kind of disconnect the actual case itself from the motherboard. So there are a number of USB feeds that go to like the front of the case. That's what these are basically doing. They give life to like the USB expansion card I had on the front, as well as they give life to the front panel of the actual case itself. I want to make sure the way this particular header is built, you can't probably see it too well, but it's like split cables going into one plug. So sometimes you'll actually get them where the plug is split, so it's like only half of the USB header is taken up by the plug. It's not like a big deal, but it's something you want to be aware of whenever you're trying to pull the stupid thing out of there. That's for sure. And then the last thing is, as I was saying, is like the case hookup itself. So like these little cables here are what give it power. Yep, so that's the power switch cable there. What's this one? I don't see the label on this one. But basically, these are what make like all the buttons on the actual case communicate properly. to the motherboard, and of course then your computer. So when you press the power button, computer kicks on. Why? Because of that little cable there. And it's always a good idea to keep hold of like the motherboard booklets, because the motherboard has this very fancy little port right here that has just several pins, and those pins have to be mapped to these types of plugs so that the case communicates correctly. And this is explained in better detail in the manual typically. So yeah, I never want to just throw that stuff away. All right, so we're down to, if I believe correctly here. Yeah, we are down to the motherboard. There's nothing else hooked up to it that we need to worry about. So I think we're ready to pull that. We are going to go ahead and pull that. I was going to get the power supply out first, but we've got cables kind of pinched underneath the case, and I don't want to lift the case up with the light where it is. So we'll just go ahead and take care of getting the motherboard out of here first. Choose my weapon. Just walk around this. Awkwardly stretching over it. Okay. These are always secured by a number of different screws. You definitely got to get them all out. Get them all off before you go pulling on the board to try to pull it out of the computer. And you also want to be careful and precise with the screwdriver toward the motherboard. You don't want to be scraping and nicking your motherboard up. Not that they're like super fragile in the sense that you can't touch them and they'll be okay, but it is one of those things where it's best just to be more careful. Err on the side of caution, I suppose. Don't necessarily like this screw. Doesn't look like a normal motherboard screw. See a couple of them like that though. Yeah. Wonder if I ran out of them or something when I was building it. I don't remember. Interesting. Okay. Screw is giving me some difficulty. All the other ones seem to be going okay though, so. I'm gonna pull these screws off of here before they go tumbling down into the case. I've had that happen more times than I want to recall, so. A friend of mine who kind of helped me through a lot of the technical stuff when I was first learning about these kind of things. He always told me like one of the things that he liked to do, which made a lot of sense to me at the time and still does make a lot of sense to me, is to keep all of the stuff that you have for a specific computer build in that computer's motherboard box. This motherboard box is usually pretty compact, and it's a nice like solid shape and size, so you can just put all your stuff in there, put the box up somewhere, and then you have it for reference later if you need it. And I have remained consistent with doing that ever since then. Not that I've built like an army of computers, but I've built a few. So I'm talking about another tool that is included in the in that kit. Just like a little grabber. Just makes it very nice for grabbing these like tiny little screws during this process. Don't touch the motherboard with your screwdriver. I proceed to stab all around this screw. There's also a ton of stuff on the motherboard that like I never used, and I didn't really know if I needed to. Like there were a lot of open ports, a lot of open pins that I could have tapped into for one thing or another, and I don't know, I never needed any of what it was there for. Man. All right, so that screw is giving me trouble. Don't think it's so small. No. I also don't think that it's big enough for this one. But it is. It is big enough for this one. It's a little sad tearing this thing apart like this, but I mean, I've been planning to do it for so long that it's not even funny. But having it been like my first main computer build, I was kind of attached to it. Alright, so that's not good. Huh. Those two screws do not want to go. They're fighting me. They're fighting me all the way. Okay. Got that one. Didn't necessarily like doing it that way, but it did the job. Oh, that was Grade A right there. Now, you'll notice as well, I didn't pull the RAM out or anything like that. There was really no reason to do that. As I had said too, like with the CPU, we left all that in there. Now, if I end up breaking the entire motherboard in half trying to get this other screw out, well, then there would be a reason to have removed all the other parts. I feel like it came up some. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's like loose now. There you go. Pretty sure that's the last one. I always want to kind of like pull it back away from the I/O shield on the back of the computer, just so none of these ports get stuck. None of the stuff off the back gets stuck in the shield. So, all in all, it's not bad. That went together. It came out pretty well. I don't see any noticeable damage when I look over the board. Everything looks pretty well intact. Certainly heavy. I'm gonna set that over here on some padding out of the way with hopefully no static on it. We'll see though, right? And we're gonna want to take this I/O shield out so that we can move it to the other computer. Okay. It's very dusty. May as well just blow that off as well. Okay. So, power supply is the last big thing in here we got to get out. There's also, like, that's the thing, too, with computers, is, like, a lot of people think that there's just, like, so much stuff inside of them going together to make it work, which, I mean, there is, but you don't put each piece in. I mean, most of it's all just on the motherboard or something like that, and you just drop that part in and you're golden. One thing too you never really ever want to do is take the power supplies apart. That's where you start getting into some really dangerous stuff. So full disclaimer, don't do that. Now, since we're going to be reusing a lot of these components in the exact same way that we had them set up in here, a little bit of a lighter weight build. In other words, we're not like going to use like the IR sensor and all that other stuff. all the fancy little things that like I added to this that I never actually used. We're not going to bother putting them in the other computer. But since everything else is going to be there, I am going to keep all of the cables that I have or had. What the heck? Got another one somewhere. Oh, it's part of the Molex connectors in the back. That's slightly problematic. Only slightly. Which means we have to clean up a little bit more than I was originally planning to. Let go. Thank you. These SATA cables out of here. More SATA cables. Try to keep them in an orderly manner. Sorry about the lighting right now. It's definitely a little darker than it should be, but as I mentioned, this is all just, you know, honestly, it's just a complete crapshoot. Okay, what I'm gonna do is very carefully lay PSU down on the bottom and tilt this back up. All right. And I'm gonna just disconnect these Molex connectors real quick in the back. Might be all I need to disconnect for now. And see if I can pull this out here. Oh, sorry for the shake. All right. Go with the camera. Perfect. One of the power supply cables definitely did not hit my motherboard. That would be just absolutely terrible. So obviously that didn't happen. All right, next is removing the CD-ROM drive because I don't really understand why it would be dead. Didn't get used a whole lot. I mean, let's be honest, CD-ROMs are sort of not the most popular thing. But for somebody at my age, you know what? I have got a lot of CDs still, and I still, you know, could use them. Also, for extra safety, I definitely recommend not having, you know, a drink right next to your workspace like this, but I need to be able to drink if I'm talking. It's interesting. Usually everything leaves me alone while ever I'm streaming, but not Facebook. Okay. All right, so Now we need to take this guy out of here. Nope. Not sure why I'm even using. That's not going to help with lighting. I apologize. Lighting is just going to be a little low right now. Working on the dark side of the computer here. I did it. I finally did it. Sounded like it went somewhere right here. But, you know, I don't see it there. Oh, I see it. Fell down into that crack at the bottom and slid an unbelievable amount of distance underneath the lip. It's good to have magnetized tools as well. So you can just, you know, magnet pull them out of there. Light a little bit again. I'll blind everyone. Oh, it's getting close to blinding. All right. I want to know how to do better lighting as well for streaming. That's something that like I really need to take some time to research. Because like my lights, I got them, I'll be honest, like I bought them because they put out a lot of light and they weren't a lot of money. And like I'm not an idiot, right? Like that's a good thing. Like light for money, that's what you're buying. I guess. Another thing too that kind of happened with this computer I forgot about is the grounding wire didn't seem to be doing a good job. I kept having it would shut down if I'd plug something into one of my audio ports here. I had the grounding cable hooked up. It should technically have been okay, but it wasn't. It just kept being not okay. I don't know how to go about testing one of these. I don't know if I could hook it up directly and see if it would actually read a disc. But the other case that we're putting this stuff in, it wouldn't be that difficult to pull it out and put a new one in if I find that it isn't actually working. So I'm not going to worry about it right now. As far as this stuff goes, I don't know. I may just not mess with this for now. Just put this aside. So, just to clarify, this case still has a future. I am going to be repurposing this case for my Unraid server. So these won't even go into anything. Nice. It's really nice. Antec. That's fine. Alright. Yeah, so this case will live on. I'm probably going to check out some fan replacements. Some of them were giving me a little bit of a rattle. And I don't really want to have to deal with it after I set it up again. But while I have the components that I need and want to build this server, I'm not focused on doing that today, as that server doesn't really get me anything that I really need in life. I do need this secondary computer at the moment. So, let's get this guy out of the way. My goodness. I forgot that... Oh no. Right. Oh yeah. All that dust. Fine, it's perfect. Beautiful. Okay. Yeah, there's like a whole set of logic. Like my beard. Whole set of things that I should be considering when it comes to like lighting for like my streams, and I don't, because I don't know well enough. I've tried a lot of different things when I was first setting up my environment, and basically what I had read was like the more natural you can make it, the better. So I just literally put an extra lamp above my computer monitor, kick it on when I'm doing a stream, and it gives enough of an like additional amount of lighting that it seems okay. But people make some like super high quality looking stuff. All right. Now, truth time. I don't know if everything fits in this case. I bought this case for my wife probably the year we got married. And my plan was to build a computer for her. Ah, did you hear that? Did you see that? So much static. It's a good thing I hit the case and not like, one of my boards. This is why you don't do anything the way I'm doing it right now. Anyway. Yeah, she picked this one out all those years ago, and she probably doesn't even like it anymore. But it is what it is. Something super flashy, but it had these like neat like orange styled like grate to the front. It wasn't like a crazy name brand or anything. Was it like Zigmatech? Okay. And that's if I pronounce the X as a Z, because that's a thing we do. It's not a full ATX, it's a mid. So it's a fair amount smaller than the other case. It's not full steel construction like the other case, and you can definitely tell it does not weigh an atrocious amount. And you can tell that it's not like some crazy high quality name brand either. This isn't like a dig at the case or like the selection. We picked it for a different reason. So it's not like a big deal. But holy heck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This thing can hold 8 hard drives? That's nuts. That's absolutely crazy. That's bonkers. Did not expect that. Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad case by any means, but like there are certain things like these thumb screws, they hurt. They are very uncomfortable to take out. I'm probably not even going to get that top one out. I don't even know if I need this back panel off. Typically, you'd... Oh, man. Typically, you do. Okay, let me grab... Typically, you do to hook up, like, your cabling, and sometimes you need access to it. Wow. Well, what am I doing? Ugh. Just because they're thumb screws. You do have the ability to do this, but... Wow. Yeah, like the other case, like, it feels so good taking those, like, out like that, because the threading just lines up nice, the metal's well cut. even with the screwdriver, that was grinding. So, you know, but I don't know. Could make the difference between a $300 case and a $100 case. You know, in a lot of cases, I'd say, you know what, that's completely fine. I'll take the less than perfect thumb screw on the back. I don't care. Looks like spiders have utilized the space accordingly, which is great. I do hate spiders, so and yes, I know that spiders hold a very important purpose and all that other stuff. I'm not talking about like going off and killing them all. It's just, you know, I don't necessarily like them. Okay. All right. Let's pull this out of here. Ooh. Fancy. Let's see here. What we got? What we got? Anything cool? Probably like an 8-year-old, 10-year-old sticker in here that like is no good anymore. Okay. So we got some risers for the motherboard. Which is good. Got a adapter plate for the front. As I mean, this stuff it's all plastic, but you know, who cares? You know, you don't need to build a computer that's going to fall through the floor if, you know, the shelf that it's on gives way. So I think there's a piece of cat litter in there. Doesn't surprise me. This has been in the corner of my office for the entire time. And my cats have been using it as a seat for the longest time. So, yeah, you know, I'm sure they won't be happy to be losing their seat. A little confused. I guess that's not too low. Just trying to see, like, there's a little, like, plates here for the PSU to go. All right, let's go ahead and get the motherboard put in here. You know, there's a lot that can be said about like timing and like how you place stuff in here. What goes in first? Oh my goodness, this thing is so light. It's so nice. I personally like to get my motherboard in first. That being said, it can cause problems because if you're trying to, like, say, slide a hard drive in here, then the motherboard could be in the way. But I stand by my decision because the other thing to consider is when you put your hard drives in, how are you going to get them out? You know, the day that you need to swap a hard drive or whatever, you're not going to probably want to pull your whole entire motherboard out. You're probably just going to take the drive out. If you have a hard time getting it in, you're going to have a hard time getting it out. So it's nice to be aware of that up front. So when I build them, I put the motherboard in, just get that out of the way. Now I am only a little concerned about the motherboard not fitting with like the PSU and everything, but you know, there's a great way to figure that out. So we take our IO shield from the motherboard, push that on in there. Pretty happy with that. That really really snapped in well, which is a good, nice, good connection. I've had IO shields be loose before. It's usually not something that I'm happy about. Can't tell what that is. It looks like a lock mechanism for... Ah, okay. Oh, that's kind of nice. I actually do like when they do this. So there's like a little gear here. Let's see if I can get the light in here better. Yeah, that's balanced. Okay. A little gear here that you, it's like a little thumb chunk. You lift that up, and then this whole bar rotates up, which allows you to then like take your slots out. But the slots are not pre-cut. Like they're perforated, so you have to like punch them out yourself. I do like when they are actually like screwed in, but I guess that is rather uncommon. I don't know. Don't like that though. Don't like that. Okay, so just gonna bring the motherboard over and kind of size it up real quick. The screw holes are all labeled inside here, but I do not know what all of the labeling is, so I'm just sizing it up. Looking at where we want to put risers. The heck are they? There we go. Wrong bag. Terrific. Okay. There we go. We'll get these risers out of here. Or offsets, or I don't know what the formal term is, but they hold the motherboard up off of the back of the case, which is actually quite important because all the solder joints are on the back of your motherboard. You don't want them grinding into the back of your case. So you always want to put these things in. And they don't put them on there for you because they can actually get in the way if you put them in places that you don't need them. So you want to know where the screw holes are for your specific motherboard, which I believe all comes down to the form factor of the motherboard. But that's where we start getting into the limitation of my firm knowledge and just start guessing at what they're doing. Okay, I know we're gonna need, I don't know, MB index is right here. It's so nice. Wow. So this is saying that an ATX, which is what this is, we want to put them in on holes A1 through F9, or A1 through A9. Nifty. So they give us exactly 9. Perfect. Yeah. This thing wasn't a bottom of the barrel thing either, so it's not like it's the cheapest case in the entire known world, but it's just not like a crazy high quality one. The official term would be middle of the road, I believe. Okay. Here's A5. Okay. There's A7. Well, that's what I get. Also got blinded. Surprisingly enough, it didn't throw any of the, I shouldn't say this out loud, but any of the screws off of the table. I mean, it landed right on him, so I'm surprised that it didn't go worse than it did. It is nice that they have this little index. I did not actually expect that. I don't know if I've actually seen that on another case or not. But so far, only one negative mark on this case, which is the thumb screws were just the one thumb screw was extremely difficult to get off. And that's a pretty minor complaint. Pretty minor complaint indeed. All right. Let's keep this stuff tucked out of the way so we're not fighting with it. Bring the motherboard into the picture. Okay. Now this can be a little fun because you got to get everything to fit into the I/O shield correctly. And it kind of has a little bit of springiness, the I/O shield does. And this is a pretty decent motherboard. So the I/O shield is actually like a pretty nice material. I've had some that the I/O shield is actually like super, super cheap and flimsy, and basically just like touching it bends. But on a nicer motherboard, they actually seem to like make them out of fairly decent material. So you can actually feel some of the tension when I'm pushing this board against it. Kind of pushes it back a little. It's a nice thing to note. I don't know if their intention here was that I would be using these screws for the motherboard or not. Kind of assume that it is, but they didn't give me enough. Did they? Maybe there's 9 in there. It was packaged with the risers, so I would hope. Oh yeah. Yeah, they gave us exactly 9. Well, that's nice. Not entirely sure what this is. Oh, that's to put the risers on to tighten them down. I don't know if they need to be a whole lot tighter than what I have them on there as, but I mean, I guess we could check them just to make sure they're not like super loose. But they got pretty small amount of threading on them, so it's not like you don't have a lot of play. You don't have a lot of leeway with them. But we'll give her a shot. Yeah, so they make this little. It's almost like a thumb screw, but it's got a socket on the back. You just set them down over the riser, and then you can tighten it. Yeah, I mean, they're moving. I'll tighten them down good. They clearly want them to be pretty tight, so. Well, that one tightened quite a bit, so I guess I can't. Maybe I didn't have them down as much as I thought I did. This other screwdriver. That one's maybe a little bit too meaty. No, that one's too narrow. I think that's probably the best case. You can also use a flathead, I suppose, but. Generally not a fan of flatheads. This exact reason. Yeah, some of the bigger risks involved with this particular build now as well is going to be the operating system itself. I have Windows 10 license technically from the original build, which was on all the same hardware, but I am reinstalling Windows 10 on a new hard drive. I've read some horror stories about licensing with it, but did I do this one? Right now I'm forgetting. I did not do that one. So, all right. Okay. Let's get the Mobo back in here. Putting it in literally like a complete. Come on. Let's not be ridiculous now. Very nice. Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. I apparently dumped those screws out. Good to know now. Okay. These should fit well. Seems to fit okay. Sometimes, and I can already see this one's a little bit crooked. As I mentioned capacitors earlier, said like try not to like touch those. Some people might think like, oh well, it's not a big deal because like I unplugged the computer. Yeah, that's obvious, right? But with a capacitor, it can hold a charge in it. So I'm not sure if I made that clear or not. Because like technically, even right now, even though this has been powered down for a while and so on and so forth, I still do what I can to avoid touching any of the capacitor caps because it's just an unnecessary risk that you could get yourself hurt. Though I do think it's probably a little unlikely, especially in a certain situation. Some of these are in really like tight spots, very hard to reach. Okay. But they're coming together. They're coming together just fine. Now, because I don't feel like digging out my motherboard booklet, I am going to try to see if I can tell what's what in this control panel here to hook up the new lines. But if I can't do that, I will have to get my booklet out. There is a little like abbreviated key on the board. So it's not impossible to figure it out without the booklet. I wonder if that watch battery is still okay. I had to replace that on a motherboard once. It's getting an alarm. The battery was dead. I'm seeing a concerning plug here. I'm gonna have to look at a little bit of depth. Okay, so that's in place. All right, we got this USB 3 ginormous plug. Uh, huh. Very interesting. I mean, it would be fantastic, right? Like if I could just plug this thing into the entire port there, but that isn't how it works, unfortunately. I don't fully know what I should do with that port. I don't seem to have, or plug. I don't seem to have a port for it. It's kind of unfortunate because it's probably going to provide like better USB 3 connectivity. But we do have a standard USB plug here. We can slap that in place. Literally any of these USB headers. Just gonna put down onto that one. And now what we do need to sort of watch is how we manage these cables a little bit. I don't want this stuff to be too tight. We need to make sure that our power supply is going to fit in here as well. I am slightly concerned about, but only a little bit. Oh, yeah. It's a nice thing about computers. Most of this stuff, almost all of this stuff, is kind of built to like certain standard sizes. Some of those sizes might vary, such as what we saw with the motherboard. You know, this is an ATX motherboard, so that is just the size of the motherboard. Excuse me. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. And this one. Should have blew that out while I had it out of the stupid computer. That was a mistake. Sorry for all the shaking. Well, I feel better having the motherboard in there. Ugh, come on. Perfect. Over the nice cleaned up motherboard. It wasn't that clean though, to be honest. Heatsink is a little cakey with dust down in there. See if I can't get that out of there. So, yeah, it's not like this is going to be dust free forever, but while I have it open like this, it's not a bad idea to kind of take the very obvious, large, glaring chunks of dust out of it. But it's good enough for me, I'd say. We'll keep that. Everything's in there, so yeah, I think this is going okay. Now we got to get the graphics card in place. Where do we want to put it, though? Probably shoot for the same port here that we had it in the first time from the other computer. So she's still got life in her, you know? She'll hold up. Now this is this actually takes 2 slots in the back, so I'm gonna have to punch 2 of these things out. I just want to make sure I'm punching the right ones out. Okay, so I take these 2 here. These things feel so flimsy compared to some of the other ones I've worked with, but I mean, they do the job. See, that's the thing I don't necessarily like, is that now if I decide to take this out of there and I put something else in that doesn't take these 2 slots up, like there's no way to put those back in because they were just like hung in there. I like the ones that have like plate covers that allow you to Yeah? How are you lined up? You're not lined up. What is this? Alright, so first big problem I'm finding with this case at this point is there's no way to put a screw down through this to hold it in place. It looks like they intended it to, but the holes here, there are screw holes here, here, and here. When you put this cover down, there are screw holes here, here, and here, but they're reversed. So like if you took this whole thing and swapped it around, those holes would line up. It would allow me to put a screw down through there. Now, obviously, if I put a screw down through there, I wouldn't be able to just lift this up without taking all those screws off. So the whole thing's a little bit crappy. I don't know if I trust this thing enough to hold this thing up. Oh boy. I don't think I'm going to. I think what I'm gonna do is just put screws in there and let this thing be open. I hate that, but you know, I feel better having something a little bit more reliable holding these things in place, like a screw and not a bent piece of metal. You know, just my 2 cents on the topic. I was saying earlier, I mean, with the weight of the graphics card itself, just having that weighing down on the PCIe slot constantly, just like the weight hanging down from that, it doesn't seem like a good idea, you know, just to have that freely hanging in there. So second negative mark. This one's a little bit bigger than the last one, but second negative mark on this case. Not sure it's enough that I would not recommend it to someone still. Like, if you like the way the case looks, I'd say structurally, so far, I'm a little bit impressed. Yeah, see, don't... Well, I can just smoosh it down over the screws. Yeah, I'll just do that. What the heck? Who cares? But you can definitely tell that the holes lined up in a way that it's almost like they had intended for it to be able to have like screws put down through both layers of metal. Which honestly, I would have appreciated that. That would have been pretty cool. All right. Well, now that we've kind of got ourselves a mess here, we have to also hook up the case. So that's fun. Let me see. Why are you AC97? I remember seeing AC97 slot. I don't know where I saw that though. The HD audio, very simply, goes over here. Say very simply, but it's all tangled up with the other cable, so... Get my head out of the way. The AC97, maybe I didn't have that. Maybe I just remember seeing a plug for it on the other case as well. Because I'm not seeing it on the motherboard. We'll let it alone. You know, who cares? I'm sure it's fine. That's where my technical knowledge of these kind of things do start to kind of waver a little, because I'm not really sure what the AC97 actually is. I mean, I could look it up and probably be like, oh, okay, cool, it makes sense now. But, alright, so this is the fun part. You got all these little chunks. Like, I mean, some of these are single pin, like, connectors. We need to be able to look very closely at the key down inside here. Okay. So I see hard drive, power, reset. So here's the power switch. Power switch. They want it up on that red. I don't know if it matters a whole lot how I have this cable routed in here. I don't want to tangle everything up with it, so I feel like this needs to go underneath here. Cable management is one of the things with, like, in general, like anytime you're doing a computer build, I find like companies that build these things all the time, like professionally, like you call up like, well, Digital Storm, for example, their cable management is so impressive. I wish that I could manage cabling as well as they do, because it looks so nice whenever you look in the case, but I can't. I'm human. I know they are too, but it makes me feel better thinking that they aren't. Okay, so here's the HD LED. That's gonna go. Yeah, I definitely should have done this before I put the graphics card in. It's minus. Okay. And we have power. And the reset switch. Okay, so reset switch goes right next to the hard drive light. So we'll slide that down there. Then the power switch. All right. Then I don't know what these guys are. What are they labeled as? Oh, power LED minus and plus. Okay. Power LED. Minus. And plus. Blah. All right. Should be good. Should be hooked up. I mean, we're not powered yet, so there's that, but whatever. Okay. I think we're done with PCIe slot stuff as well, so I'll go ahead and shut that because we're not putting the capture card in this one. What time are we at? 1 o'clock. I think it may be time for me to wrap up for the night. I think this is a decent place to stop anyway. I mean, I can. Tell me I like wrapped these cables around. Okay, good. I'll probably Oh yeah, I can just tuck those back in there. That makes sense. It's a little bit better overall. Okay, so we've got all these power connections that we're not currently using for anything. And then these are the main power hookups here. I need these to go into my graphics card. So that one. Let me get this Molex connector out of here. Molex power, I guess, out of here. Okay. All right, and then we can hook up this guy. Goes all the way. All the way up there. Probably just tuck it up that way. May end up like putting a oh wow, they have ports here for water cooling if you so choose. I probably won't choose that, so I'm not planning to water cool this one at this point. If I would have water cooled this PC, it would have been in the other case, so no offense to this case, this build, but this is like this computer's revival at this point. It does have a good enough graphics card in it though that like if I wanted to use it for like video games of any kind, I certainly could. Okay. There we have it. Now, it was a little bit easier given the fact that like we don't have like we didn't have to put the CPU in, we didn't have to put the RAM in. Like, RAM's easy, but you know, we kind of cheated the whole build because we already had so much of it already done. But this is a little interesting in the case because like now I am seeing that like it is going to be a little bit tricky to get in here for hard drive mounting. I'm also not sure what is going to be available for the size of drive because this is just the 2.5-inch solid state. So gonna need to do a little bit of looking for that. I may need to get a tray. I think I have one. Not sure if it will work in this particular case or not, but I'll have to look into that. But that makes this a really great cutoff time because I think everything went pretty smooth, getting the stuff out of the old case, putting it into the new. The only things that are left are, you know, new pieces or just kind of like wrapping up stuff. I have to get the CD-ROM drive in and get that powered. So allocating all of this stuff to devices and getting that all powered up and getting the other devices hooked into the motherboard. I may actually swap this out because this is like a massive hookup to be able to power like all of the different hard drives. I don't need that, so it's not necessary. Not for this build. So, okay. Well, we'll see what happens when we get to the next step. But this will probably pick up tomorrow. I need to finish this. If I have time tomorrow to touch this, I will jump back on stream and wrap it up. I imagine. I'm not going to go through OS installation. That's an obvious like no brainer, and it's just like a waste of time that would bore everyone. So if you found this interesting, I'm happy because I think it's pretty interesting stuff. It is cool. I think that like watching other people build a computer can be fun, can be entertaining. Not that like I'm building this from like complete scratch anymore, but still like it's cool seeing this stuff come together. I also know a lot of people who have always kind of seen sorry. Moving some stuff here. Close your eyes. I'm moving things around. There we go. Woo! How's it going? That's okay, right? What's going on? There we go. Yeah, I know a lot of people that have seen like computers as a bit of a mystery, like what's in them, what's going on with them, but really there's nothing to them. I mean, there's a lot to them, but as far as like building one goes, unless you're actually trying to like build the motherboard yourself, which okay, crazy, but whatever. You get your motherboard, you get your CPU, you get your heatsink on that CPU, which usually comes with the CPU anyway. Your RAM, any of the additional peripherals that you would want, like CD-ROM drive, graphics card. You'll need your power supply and some kind of storage. Solid state is best. Actually, M2 solid state would be better, but we're going with a SATA, solid state drive instead of a hard drive. Hard drives are slower. But all of it is like easy to research. I mean, the internet is chock full of technical information, and it's so easy to find like why you want to pick a hard drive or why you want to pick a solid state drive and how to hook them up and the different interfaces. What is IDE or SATA? Like they're all just fancy terms. At the end of the day, you're going to throw all this stuff into the computer. You're going to plug them all into the motherboard and then power it up, and you're done. It's not that tricky. So yeah, like I said, should be hopefully finishing this up tomorrow. I really need this computer just done and working, and I still have to go through the whole like Windows installation process, and hopefully the licensing isn't going to give me any trouble. But at the end of the day, I just need the thing finished and taken care of so I can get back to everything else that I have going on. So, yeah, as long as I have time tomorrow, I will jump back onto this and finish it up. There's not a lot left to it. Yeah, but I mean, it could take another hour if I'm cautious moving through it. Plus, I need to kind of dig up a tray so that I can actually put the SSD into this computer. I know I have some. I just got to find them. So anyway, that's going to do it for me tonight. I know it was a very different stream. I wish it had gone smoother and had a better setup. But like I said before, life gives you lemons, it's just the way it's panned out. Needed to get this thing resolved after Microsoft decided to kill the computer to begin with. I definitely will take some blame to it all, but I do think that a lot of their updates can be a little overly heavy-handed. But I mean, I didn't do the research either, so it's possible I could have just gotten it fixed up, but it just made sense to do this since I needed to do it anyway. So, that's it. So, hopefully anyone found this stream entertaining, found something interesting, maybe you learned something about something, probably not, just listening to senseless rambles of a crazy individual at this point. But hey, that's my streams for you. And I do hope to be getting back into gaming here on this coming week. I really do need to hit Fall Guys pretty hard. I feel like more time has passed than I think has, and it's going to end up burning me on getting to that max level. On the bright side, if I miss the max level this time, I'll probably stop caring about hitting the max level, which will allow me to explore other games instead of playing that one. With my streams becoming a little more limited, it's sort of tricky to figure out how I want to spend it, like what games I want to actually play. I can't say that Fall Guys really ranks high on the list of games that I want to stream. But I have a lot of fun playing them on stream. So kind of works both ways a little, I guess. But anyway, yeah, it's going to do it. So hopefully I see you all in the next stream. All right. See ya.